On the public business, we start with the state of the constituency debate, and this evening we will hear from the Member of Parliament for Kingston Eastern to start this Eastern Kingston and leader of opposition business in this parliament.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I greet you, I greet my colleagues in this honorable House, and those, of course, who are watching this debate. I want to start, firstly, Madam Speaker, by acknowledging that we are observing Cancer Awareness Month, and in particular this week we are paying special attention to our women who have to go through the ravages of breast cancer, another form of cancer. And so in acknowledging them, making sure that I demonstrate by wearing my pin today, and we call upon the blessings of the Almighty to protect and guide our women, especially during these difficult times that they face. Madam Speaker, I am serving as Member of Parliament for the great constituency of Kingston East and Port Royal for 25 years. I have to acknowledge the tremendous support that I continue to get from my people. I want to acknowledge the support from my councillors, Mrs. Dobson and Mrs. Lewis, my executive members, families and friends. And I know that they weren't going to be here today, but they are watching on my Facebook Live. Madam Speaker, as I explained to you before, I am not giving a written speech this year. Yes, and it is more so out of protest, and I'll explain why. Today I will speak from some brief notes that I did, because I was reviewing my speeches of the past, and I must say, Madam Speaker, I have to lament the way in which these debates are treated, and I want to go back to the original intention. And you know, when I was in school, when I was doing literature, for example, they would say that we need to assess an author's work or a poet's work based on the intention, the objective that was established. And those times you can't interview the author nor the poets. You have to look at the work and make a determination as to, as to what were the objectives of this. It is good that in relation to the constituency debates, we still have many people who have been here from the outset. And I recall that I was the leader of government business at the time. And there were a number of things that we wanted to achieve from these debates. First of all, when we were looking at the debates, we acknowledged that people were not paying attention enough to what we do inside here. Our speeches were too long, and in those days the sectoral debate will go on for 2.5 hours and so on. And we wanted to get something that could get the Jamaican people to focus a lot more on their business. And so this was one of the objectives of the constituency debate. We also recognized the futility in members trying to advocate for their constituencies in the Standing Finance Committee. Those were times when the Standing Finance Committee of Parliament, when we were meeting to deal with the budget, would go on for hours. We'll be here until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we would object or comment on so many different lines in the budget. And it would mean nothing in the end. At the time I was in government, And I know it would mean nothing in the end. So it was also to try to address that, where members felt that their concerns weren't being addressed. And thirdly, we acknowledged that there were so many constituents who were complaining that, first of all, the CDF was too small, so MPs couldn't do much with it, and that, in fact, so much of it was spent on social welfare stuff, and that there were certain big projects that needed to get the focus of the Consolidated Fund and the Ministry of Finance. So these debates were organized around this time in sync with the national budget call. Every year, the Ministry of Finance calls its agencies together and say, listen, submit to us your proposals for the budget. Similarly, we are being called during this or these debates in the same way. We are here as equals. So in these debates, there's no distinction between the Prime Minister and the member from Northwest St. Anne. We are all here because we come here equally elected by a group of people in a constituency. Madam Speaker, we departed from the Westminster tradition in relation to these debates by allowing the Speaker of the House to speak in a debate. This is unheard of. I mean, it's a tradition in the Westminster system that speakers get what they want, but they never advocate for it. In fact, in the UK, speakers are normally protected. People don't even contest against them because it's supposed to ensure your unbiased approach to the Parliament. But in these debates, the Speaker is allowed to make a presentation. Madam Speaker, I believe, in light of what we have seen over the number of years, and I am not in any way distracting from some of the excellent presentations we have seen. In fact, I was speaking to a journalist today when I noted that my presentation today is entitled, Does the Constituency Debate Benefit Constituents? And the journalist was saying, well, for the first time she's hearing MPs and they're giving reports, some glowing on their stewardship and also speaking about special projects. And that is good, and probably we need to embrace some of that. But is that the reason for the constituency debates? And I say, based on the inception, based on all that has gone before, that is not so. The leader of, or the acting leader of government business has indicated that there is going to be a review of the debate to provide for more time, and I have no difficulty with that. But if we are going to be true to the original intent, we have to do much more than that. Madam Speaker, I find it offensive that the Ministry of Finance has not seen it fit to be present when the people's representatives speak. And for the acting leader of government business to say to me that they are watching from TV and so on, I find that grossly disrespectful. I think it is totally disrespectful. But also, Madam Speaker, the intent, and the member you just came in, the intent behind these debates was to influence the budget. So it is not only the Ministry of Finance who needs to be present, but there are some important ministries and agencies that also need to be present. Madam Speaker, apart from our lawmaking function as legislator, these debates provide a most important function for us as the people's representatives, and they should not be in any way undermined. And as I mentioned before, as we approach amending the standing orders, we need to make it a requirement that certain agencies of the state especially the Ministry of Finance, be present. Be present. And more than that, Madam Speaker, there should be at the end of these debates a summary of the proposals that have been made by the people's representatives. And that those summary should also get the focus of the Ministry of Finance, and especially at the commencement of the budget. There ought to be a presentation from the Minister on the proposals that came from Northwest St. Anne, Western St. Mary, a specific item to be addressed by the Minister before we get into the details of the budget. That will give the type of primacy, the importance to what we here as the people's elected representative are doing inside here. Madam Speaker, otherwise this is going to continue to be a talk shop. It will continue to represent for many of us frustration and dissatisfaction, because the current practice where you go cap in hand to rely on a minister's benevolence cannot work. As kind as the ministers would be, I don't believe that is the proper functioning of our democracy. And there's further evidence of the unimportance of these debates. Every year, important recommendations are made regarding the role and effectiveness of the members in this chamber.
Members, I'm going to ask you to hear the member in silence. I will protect every member in here, but more so when the leader of government business is on his or her feet, I'm going to have them, and I'm going to do the same for the leader of opposition business. So please allow us to hear what is being said in the House this afternoon. I want us to think, and I want to remind each and every one of us in here, as we talk about the state of the children and the discipline, they are watching us, their teachers are watching, having children watch us, and we need to set an example. So please, we all have a chance to speak, and I want you to allow the leader of the opposition business to make his presentation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I really don't take it as disrespect. I believe that people might be focused on other things, but I want to challenge you to focus on what I'm saying, because it could make the world of a difference with our effectiveness as members of Parliament. Last year, for example, Madam Speaker, there were some important proposals that were made. The member from East Central St. Andrew made some fundamental proposals, member from South East St. Anne, and in my own presentation there were some proposals made as to how we could make this chamber far more effective, and us as members of Parliament be able to realize far greater successes. In fact, there was a signal from the government that there would be some follow-up to these proposals last year. A year has passed and nothing has ensued. So, Madam Speaker, in reviewing these debates, I think, yes, let us increase the time. I had put 15 minutes so that we could zero in on those budget items, but I think we could incorporate the reports from members of Parliament, but we must get the government to focus on the people's request, and that they be taken into account when the budget is being formulated. Madam Speaker, the acting leader of government business has also given notice to the Parliament for a review of the standing orders in relation to questions and answers. Questions and answers play a crucial role in the functioning of our Parliament and our democracy. As I've said many times, Madam Speaker, though any member can ask questions, it is really an effective tool that the opposition uses to ensure government accountability. Unlike motions and bills that can be tabled by any one of us, once a question is tabled, you have to insist that the answers come after 21 days. If not, then the questioner is the person whose permission ought to be sought for there to be any delay. And as we had debated recently, those questions can be delegated to other ministers. And I know that we are about to review the standing orders, but we are going to be resolute that the existing rules remain sacrosanct and nothing should be done that would impair the vibrancy and the authenticity of our democracy. Madam Speaker, I had also given notice that we intend to invoke Section 17B of the standing orders in relation to Prime Minister's question time. I was hoping that by now there would have been some exchange across the aisle as to the conduct of this particular standing order so that we can clarify how this new feature will be conducted. It is a view that these questions will relate to important national issues asked orally and is only subject to the Speaker's ruling on the matter of urgency. And next week is the second Tuesday of this month, so we expect to engage in that aspect of the standing orders. Then, Madam Speaker, in my brief address, I have regard to all the things that I have submitted in the past. I want to say we in the constituency of Kingston East and Port Royal have incorporated the use of technology. It has been spurred on by the ravages of COVID. I am very pleased that we were the first constituency to conduct our CDF consultation online. This is a requirement by the CDF, and they were very pleased to see that a consultation started on time online, and it had tremendous participation from our people. And also, we did for the first time our face-to-face online using my Facebook feature. Again, we had very good support from the people. But I want to address this issue of technology in our constituencies. And I too am grateful for the 3 free Wi-Fi centers. You're going to get more in my constituency. But, Madam Speaker, and I'm sorry that the Minister is not in the House, but I'm very concerned about the future of the Universal Service Fund, because the original aim, and again, I can speak with some acquaintances with that because I think I was around at the time. The original aim was not for us to have in various communities free Wi-Fi. The aim was for us to have free Wi-Fi throughout Jamaica. The aim was for Jamaica to become a veritable hotspot. So if you're traveling from Kingston to Montego Bay, public space, you should be able to have free Wi-Fi throughout. That was the original aim. And that was the thinking behind the fight that we had to go through to get the fund established. Yes, and the member recalls the fight. We had to impose a tax on international voice telephony terminating in Jamaica. We didn't pay the tax. It was imposed on people calling Jamaica. And some people were very upset that we were doing so. And for 3 days, Jamaica was locked off because the international carriers protested. They shut off the circuits. Many of you are too young to remember this. But for 3 days, those circuits were shut down, and the opposition was calling for the minister's head. But we didn't blink, and they had to turn on back the circuits after 3 days because we were able to justify that Jamaicans should have access, should not be in any way, not be able to have full broadband access and to be on the same level as people from anywhere in the world. So out of that, over $14 billion was generated in about 5 years. At the time, that money went straight to the Consol Fund. And it wasn't until the law was changed in 2013 to enable the USF to have its own accounts, that those funds now revert or go to the USF account. But those $14 billion have not yet gone back to the Universal Service Fund. And we had justified this imposition of the chess on the basis that it's going to be used to enable Jamaicans to have access to broadband. And I'm therefore calling upon the Ministry of Finance, in light of the fact that the USF does not now have enough money to do more. You don't need, you want 10 Wi-Fi facility in your constituency. 3 is not enough. Yes. No, in your constituency, you have about 40 communities. You need 40. But the USF doesn't have the resources because a lot of that money was sequestered. And, Madam Speaker, even now as we speak, the funds that do come into the USF, those funds are not enough because the importance of voice telephony that generated these funds has dwindled. And people are no longer making, as they used to do, voice telephone calls in the rate and at the cost that they used to. But many of them are using free WhatsApp calls, so we're not attracting, we're not getting the revenues. And so it is now time for us to review that and to impose assess on some of the data services. But we must do so that we do not disincentivize or we do not continue to support those businesses that are involving data services. So it's a tricky road, but the funds, we do need the funds to get the USF to be able to be viable. And instead of imposing the tax on voice, because not much money will come that way, it should be on data services, but not on those services that relate particularly to business. So those are my proposal, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to touch briefly now on some of the issues that I have raised in these debates over the number of years that still remain unanswered, going nowhere. The first one has to do with Harbour View, Harbour Heights drainage. We have had this major drainage problem that every time there is a significant rainfall, there is flooding. The government, through the Minister of Finance 4 years ago, and repeated every year when we sit at the Standing Finance Committee, have made pledges to fund promises. In fact, 3 years ago, $70 million was found in the budget, and I eyeballed the minister, he's not in the chamber now, along with his chief technical person, and they say, see there, $70 million. It is going to be attached to the South Coast Development Roadway being done by China Harbour, and that will be done as a priority project.
No, you see, no, you don't.
Not $1 has been spent so far, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, the situation is dire. If we were to get a significant rain event, those people on Harbour Drive and in the Harbour Heights community, and we do share a boundary with the member from East Rural St. Andrew, those people are going to be severely affected, not only with their houses being washed away, but, God forbid, Madam Speaker, lives could be lost as a result. And this has been outstanding for 4 years. Commitments have been given for 4 years every year. And it's going to take major destruction, deaths, for some funds to be provided by the government. We can't wait any longer, Madam Speaker. And that's the reason why next year I won't be participating in these debates if that problem is not solved. And I promise you that. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Tourism last year promised me that this long outstanding matter of enabling Windward Road to really become that area that welcomes people from the Norman Manley Airport into a major township. And that the project that was envisaged some time ago of creating an elegant corridor along Windward Road up to Mountain View, some will go along Windward Road up to Ellison Road. It was a project that was properly fashioned, budgeted. I took the people into a room and we went and saw in video form the new Windward Road, all electrical wires underground, the facade. No, not true. Not true. No, but the project started. Madam Speaker, the project started. Yes. The project, no, that's not true. The project started by your government. And I've already acknowledged, my thanks to the Prime Minister. Right? So, no, that's not true. Madam Speaker, I was just about to commend the government, you know. I was just about to commend the government. Because after appealing to the Prime Minister, we got the first part of the road fully rehabilitated, not patching, fully rehabilitated from Rockfort to Mountain View. We got the road fully rehabilitated. But it remains for 3 years now, because it should have gone up to Mountain View and then extend to Ellison Road, Windward Road. So what we have now is we have a fine piece of road from Mountain View Avenue to Rockfort, but the rest is terrible. So your visitors come and they're driving and, oh, the road is so nice. And as they cross over Mountain View, the same road, we have an unfinished project. Yeah. The Minister of Tourism has promised me that they are going to find the funds. And I am asking for the last time, let us finish from Mountain View Avenue to Ellison Road. Let people who travel into the city, they land at Norman Manley Airport, many of them take the back road. And it's not the back road that people, no, this is a different back road, right? We want people though to intermingle with the residents along Windward Road. And I'm making that submission again, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is not all gloom and doom, because when the Port Royal port development was envisaged and the Port Authority met with me, we put down certain benchmarks, we put down certain requirements, because it would have been unfair for visitors to come in a lovely facility and then to be met upon by frown faces of the people who weren't having proper water, or sewage was overflowing and electrical wiring not in place. So we dealt with the electrical wiring that has been fixed. And I'm pleased, Madam Speaker, that as we speak, the sewage that was provided for the port is going to be extended to enable the entire town of Port Royal to benefit from that. And also, contract has now been awarded. Yes, no, we have to fight for it. It would not have happened without the fight. The port would not have been built without this. And I'm so happy, Madam Speaker, that the Cabinet recently approved contracts for new water mains to be established from airport into Port Royal. So the people of Port Royal will finally have proper water facilities. Good representation. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are some projects that we are pursuing, and we intend to have them as part of legacy as you move on. And the Minister of Sports is quite aware of of one of them. We are continuing to rely on her office for the consultation and for support as we pursue 2 stadiums, one in Rockfort and the other on Windward Road to facilitate Camperdown High School. Madam Speaker, the acting House Leader is otherwise engaged now, but I think she will recall when she saw plans, she was very impressed by such plans. We have developed for the Rockfort Sports Complex a facility that will stage
Madam Speaker, I now ask that
10 minutes.
that the standing orders be suspended to enable the member to continue his speech to its conclusion. Madam Speaker.
Members, the question before the House is that the member be given sufficient time to complete his presentation. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it, member.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I did say that I wasn't making a speech today. Yes, I'm just speaking from some rough notes. You know, I started the speech last night, no, 2 weeks ago, completed it, and when I looked and compared with my other speeches of the years, they were almost identical. Because, yes, and so that I'm not reading it today. But going back to that sports complex, Rockfort Football Club. We were once the pride and joy of the Major League, and we're still in that category, but we want to give the people of Rockfort a facility that is much more than just a football field. We want the women to be able to play netball. We also have in the foothills a design for an amphitheater. Yes, and we have all of those designs. In fact, we also have a boxing ring where all of them guys who believe them bad put on the gun, come in the ring, and let us see who better than who, right? So all of those plans are in place, designs done, and we're looking for support. We did get some private sector interest recently, but whenever people hear of violence in the area, they back away. And my appeal to my people to put down the badmanism, put away the gun. Let us try to live in peace and harmony, because there's no oil in Rockfort. So this turf war don't make sense. And those people who are funding the violence, and those funds are not coming from Jamaica. There's no money here to give them to buy guns. Those funds are coming from overseas. People who used to live in the area, we are asking them to stop it. Send instead a sewing machine. Send instead a block making machine. Send some tablets. But stop it, because from our being member of Parliament, and my colleague from Central Kingston now, he's feeding it. We have been plagued by crime and violence, unnecessary wanton killing of people who grew up together, but just can't resolve conflicts as they arise. So, Minister, that is a project, and I'm going to use that facility to try and see if we can build back greater social harmony in the community. And then Warwicker Hills. I mentioned this to the Minister of Tourism, and the TPDCO people are now on board, Port Authority as well. Warwicker Hill is famous for bad things. But can you imagine this walking trail, hiking trail, that will enable our visitors and our people alike to hike up to the hill? Yes, it is an amazing view. No, let us do it now. Let us invest now. It's an amazing view for people to walk up from the bottom up to the top of the hill. And in fact, I believe we can put cable cars up there and a zip line eventually. We can make Kingston into a tourism destination, similarly to Mobe which is now having greater violence.
Okay.
On that note, Madam Speaker, I regret to announce that yesterday we had a murder in Port Royal. Port Royal is the most peaceful place in this country. And so far this year, due to, I would say, domestic matters, we have had 2 persons killed. And we have to cauterize that immediately, because what will attract people to Kingston is Port Royal. It's Port Royal. And I'm just hoping that we can get over this. The perpetrator will be brought to justice quickly, and that there will be no retaliation. That is my hope and my plea. So, Madam Speaker, as I close this very brief presentation, without detracting from the presentations that have been made, and there have been some very good presentations in this House, I think we have to go back to the original intent of these debates to enable us as the people's representatives to feel justified in coming here year after year, yes, to make appeals, to make submissions for projects, yes, for them to be properly funded. Well, first of all, for attention to be given, yes, and for them to be analyzed and then properly funded. That was the original intent of these debates, and if those objectives are not being met, then, Madam Speaker, this is my final time out there. I want to thank you all for your patience, and may the good people of Kingston East and Port Royal continue to have progress. Thank you very much.
Madam Speaker, as someone said, a very sober presentation from the leader of the opposition business and Member of Parliament for East Kingston and Port Royal. Madam Speaker, the next presentation will be made by Ms. Crystal Lee, Member of Parliament and Northwest.
Members, I want, before the Member of Parliament for Centre and Northwestern speaks, to thank the member from Kingston Eastern for a measured and useful and insightful presentation. Thank you very much. And now we will hear from the Member of Parliament from Northwest Centre. Long time.
Madam Speaker, permission to speak from a seat that is not my own.
Granted.
Madam Speaker, I remain thankful and humbled to be given this opportunity to rise in the Houses of Parliament for another time to make my contribution to the state of the constituency debate. I give thanks and glory to God in the highest for giving me His protection, strength and direction in these most critical times of my journey as a young Member of Parliament. I thank and commend the Most Honourable Prime Minister Andrew Michael Holness and my party leader for his ardent support and exceptional leadership. I would like to acknowledge my colleagues sitting in both houses. I acknowledge you, Madam Speaker, or Deputy Speaker, as you continue to lead with fairness and impartiality. I would also like to recognize the Clerk of the House and the rest of her team here at the Houses of Parliament for their continuous hard work. Madam Speaker, I am grateful for the continuous support and industriousness of my 4 councillors and councillor caretaker. I thank the dedicated and hard-working members of my office team management team, executive members, and party workers. I thank my family, friends, well-wishers, and my colleagues that I work with in the private sector for their continued love and support. I remain grateful and with much humility, Madam Speaker, to be given the opportunity to serve my wonderful people of St. Ann Northwestern. I want to take this opportunity to reassure them that I am working to the best of my ability to give them the best representation in which they deserve. Though the journey may be challenging, I will certainly continue to listen to the concerns of our people, be as accessible as best as I possibly can, and continue to lobby hard for what will create a better life for all. Madam Speaker, we have made significant strides this year as it relates to road and infrastructural development. All commitments mentioned in my presentation last year have either been completed or in the process towards execution. We have completed the following road projects: road rehabilitations of sections of Back Salem, Islington to Bengal, Hampton, Touchfield, Keith, implementation of drainage system and paving at the Bamboo Library, implementation of drainage system in Salem, and the building of the retaining wall and river training at Sleepy Hollow. This includes the drainage improvement at Runaway Bay to increase the runoff of stormwater in the Runaway Bay Square. Madam Speaker, rehabilitation of the Milford Road in Orange Hill is currently being done and should be completed within a few days. Procurement process is far advanced for the roadway in the Lewis community. Yes. Through the Constituency Development Fund, sections of the Egypt Road at the York Castle High School will be rehabilitated soon. Through the Tourism Enhancement Fund, sections of the Mount Pleasant to Mount Olivet roadway will be rehabilitated in short order. Madam Speaker, our diligent Minister of Local Government and Rural Development has committed to rehabilitating sections of the roadway in the community of Tricey, leading to Knapdale. This project will directly impact the lives of over 1,000 residents living in that community. Madam Speaker, I am extremely elated to announce today that the Runaway Bay to Brownstone roadway was sent out to tender 2 Saturdays ago. The people of St. Ann Northwestern have been waiting for decades for the rehabilitation of this major roadway. This roadway, Madam Speaker, goes to the heart of the constituency, and that allows and links the northern part of the island to the southern areas. Madam Speaker, I want to make it categorically clear that there were no previous financial commitments in the pipeline when I just went in as a Member of Parliament to rehabilitate this roadway. The commitment came when I made representation and the sedulous minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation with the responsibility of works visited the constituency last year on July 21. Yes. The minister made several commitments on that tour of the constituency. Most have already been addressed, and others are in process. On behalf of my constituents, I wish to say we thank you, Minister, for your commitment and diligence. Madam Speaker, we have major traffic build-up in the constituency across the rest of the coast in St. Ann and the constituency. Yes. As development continues to rapidly take place across the corridor, we are happy and thankful to learn of the plans the government will be undertaking to solve the traffic issues on the North Coast Highway that will add capacity that will make commutes safe and efficient for many years to come. Madam Speaker, the issue is this: the daily capacity of the North Coast Highway through the parish of St. Ann is approximately 10,640 vehicles. However, the capacity of the roadway has been exceeded. Data collected last year shows that the average annual daily traffic between Greenwood and Discovery Bay is approximately 16,100 vehicles. The average annual daily traffic between Salem and Miami Bay is approximately 21,000 vehicles. Yes. This creates a significant capacity deficit, Madam Speaker, in both segments, resulting in the traffic. As announced by the Most Honourable Prime Minister, the public investment project will involve the construction of an additional 2 lanes covering 60 kilometres from Sea Castles in St. James to Miami Bay in St. Anne. Madam Speaker, though this project is being pursued, it is also important for us to consider other safety measures on the roadway. A feasibility study has been carried out by NWA as it relates to the implementation of a traffic light at Discovery Bay by the intersection that leads to Brownstown. The study revealed that there is the need for a traffic light in that area. And Madam Speaker, we hope that based on the history of accidents taking place at that spot, it will be treated as a matter of priority.
It will be.
Madam Speaker, there is much more to be desired of our road networks, including main roads, parochial roads, and also roads in housing developments. This shows how deplorable the state of the road networks were across the constituency up to September 2020. Shame. Madam Speaker, estimates were done on the following roads: Mount Zion to Sturgetown via Landovery Mountain, Discovery Bay to Orange Valley, and sections of Orange Hill by officers by the NWA. NWA funding. Madam Speaker, this will be a pending funding for these projects to come through. The Prairie to Bamboo Road, Bamboo to Brownstown, Brownstown to Wilberforce, Brownstown to Retreat, Discovery to Stewarttown, Old Folly to Farmtown and Betheltown, Old Road to Sturgetown. Hold on. Jack's Lodge, hold on. Stand fast. Wesley Crescent, Goshen, Minard Hill, Scarlet Hall, Salem to Hampstead, Kensington, Summerhill. Oh, no. We're not doing them. No. Hold on. Just naming a few, Madam Speaker, are all in dire need of rehabilitation.
So where is the in this? Do road, Crystal.
Madam Speaker, I would like to bring to the attention of the Parliament an issue that doesn't only exist in Centre and Northwestern, but also across other constituencies as well. Yes. The long-standing issue of deplorable road conditions and other infrastructure within housing developments. This includes developments that are done by the Housing Agency of Jamaica, the National Housing Trust, private developers, and to a lesser extent, the Urban Development Corporation. While I'm mindful, Madam Speaker, that the NHT has embarked on a national program to rehabilitate roads and other infrastructure in developments that was built by them, there is a lacuna in our development approval process. What obtains now, Madam Speaker, is that when these roads deteriorate and fall into a state of disrepair, there is an expectation that the political representatives ought to effect repairs to these roads when they are neither classified as a parochial road or an NWA road. Yes. In my constituency, Madam Speaker, the residents in the communities of Bel Air, Meadows, Cardiff Hall, Mount Edgecombe, Seacrest, Bridgewater, just to name a few, have been struggling with these issues for many years. Madam Speaker, whereas we welcome the developments in the constituency, we are calling for a transitional arrangement to be introduced as part of the conditions of approvals for large housing developments.
Excellent call.
In the first instance, a clear timeline for the completion of development ought to be set and be adhered to. Secondly, developers, whether private or government developers, are to maintain these roads for 24 months, during which time the roads are to be transferred to the municipal corporation. Madam Speaker, for developments that are currently having these problems developed by the HAJ and UDC, I am calling for them to roll out similar programs to that of the NHT, to rehabilitate these scheme roads and other infrastructure, and thereafter transfer them to the municipal corporation. Good call. Madam Speaker, for those roadways within private developments, recognizing that some of these developers have moved on, no longer in business or deceased, I recommend that the municipal corporation, in a structured way, perhaps by virtue of the age of these developments, take over these roads. With this, it will set the platform for government resources to be used over time in these developments, whether through the CDF, the municipal corporation, or other agencies of government. Madam Speaker, this is a matter I have taken keen interest in, as I have seen the suffering of constituents who have bought into these developments. A lot of these persons have their titles and they are paying their property taxes.
Yes.
Upon completion of the research and consultation, I will be tabling a motion in this Honourable House so that this matter can be debated.
Well done.
Madam Speaker, I know our government has the very best interests of heart for our people, and will seek to solve this problem which has existed for decades. Madam Speaker, like many other rural constituencies, the water woes in Central and Northwesterns remain a real concern to us. Though we are making steps in the right direction, over 60% of our communities still has a shortage or no piped and potable water. All the projects announced last year in my presentations have been making progress, Madam Speaker. However, it is rather slow, and this is primarily due to budgetary restraints and delays in the supply of material and equipment from overseas. Madam Speaker, the Rosemount water supply upgrade is underway. Pumps have been procured, new pipes are being laid, tank has been procured and should be erected soon. This will impact the communities in the areas of Discovery Bay, Bridgewater, Primrose Hill, and to facilitate the extension to Mount Pleasant and Mount Olivet. Based on the upgrading work, we will be able to supply existing residents, Madam Speaker, adequately and reliably, and to accommodate the future developments in these areas. Due to supply chain issues, we have not yet completed Phase 1 of the Minard Water System project. Once the pumps and motors have been delivered, upgrading works will commence, and thereafter we will move to Phase 2, depending on the availability of funding. This will be to address the pipeline issues with numerous leaks within the water network. Enough water will then be available to extend to the communities of Philadelphia, Knapdale, Aberdeen, and sections of Orange Hill currently without water. The National Water Commission has committed to bringing water supply to Enfield and Retreat, impacting over 1,500 residents. The procurement for the 4 kilometers of pipes and fittings has already started. Madam Speaker, over 7,000 residents across the community of Queenite, Content, Keith, Lawrence Park, Homecastle, Retirement, Flamstead, Brown Peace, and Adnagrass are eagerly awaiting the completion of the Queenite water system. Yes. This is a joint project between the NWC and Rural Water Supply. The update on this project is that the well has been completed and the approvals have been granted by the Water Resources Authority.
That's good.
Madam Speaker, the Tickets water system is still being worked on by the Rural Water Supply. We have over 2,000 residents anxiously awaiting its completion. Work continues to replace the leaking pipelines, construct concrete covering for the reservoir, and to procure the solar pump. This project has also slowed down, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we are being hopeful that the Freehill Water Project, which will impact over 1,900 residents investigated by the Rural Water Supply, will be given some priority for the upcoming financial year. We are working with the NWC and the Central Municipal Corporation to find a solution to bring piped water to Mount Ararat and Mines. Rural Water is looking into providing a tank for the community of Mount Zion, where there is an unreliable water system due to insufficient water being in the spring during drought months. Yes. Madam Speaker, we are truly hoping that there will be no further delays as it relates to the Green Park to Bamboo Water System project. This project is funded by the Caribbean Development Bank and will impact the lives, Madam Speaker, of over 25,000 residents across the parish. Madam Speaker, this parish has been conceptualized for many years now. The people continue to suffer with no piped water and the unreliability of trucked water. They have become impatient on this matter regarding not having this basic yet precious commodity that should be accessible to all. Madam Speaker, now that the design is almost completed, we are making a special request to our Minister of Finance and the Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation with the responsibility of water to help the people of St. Ann by prioritizing this project and let us make it a reality. Madam Speaker, all 23 government-operated schools in the Quality Education Circle were successfully opened for the new school term. Despite the challenges of the learning loss due to COVID-19, I am proud to report that the top performing students in the parish of St. Ann for PEP results is from St. Ann Northwestern, the Servite Primary School. Madam Speaker, due to the growth in population in the constituency, primarily caused by the availability of new job opportunities in construction and tourism, as well as the increasing numbers of housing development, the constituency will require additional physical spaces in our schools. We are currently facing challenges in this regard, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the York Castle High School currently has over 280 students in its sixth form program. The school has also unveiled a slew of new programs over the past year. The increase in enrollment and the introduction of new programs has created the need for additional classrooms, labs, and workspaces. We are working together to build out these new spaces. However, whatever can be granted towards this initiative will be greatly appreciated, Minister.
Yes, the Minister always listens.
Madam Speaker, the Discovery Bay High School is operating on the compound of the Discovery Bay Primary School. Ideally, the school needs to relocate to ensure that the facility is adequate for the secondary program and very soon the sixth form pathway program. Currently, the ministry is undergoing pre-contracting works for the construction of additional classroom spaces to accommodate the various cohorts of students at its current location. The board has located lands at Minard, which is in proximity, and is awaiting the Ministry of Education and Youth to start the building process for the school's new state-of-the-art home. Madam Speaker, the Brownstown High School remains on shift with over 2,000 students enrolled. The school requires approximately 18 additional classrooms to transition from the shift system to the whole-day system. However, we are of the view that if Discovery Bay High School is relocated to the lands at Minard, this could also alleviate the burden from the Brownstown High School.
Right.
Nonetheless, the school would still need additional classrooms, labs, sanitary conveniences, workshops, and office spaces. Madam Speaker, the Brownstown Model Basic is slated to transition to a government standalone infant school in January 2023. The current structure will require some modification for it to meet the standards of the Early Childhood Commission. Just last month, I brought the leadership of an overseas charity there, and they were granted a donation on the spot. However, with much to do, additional support is surely needed. The Minister of Education and Youth has in her plans to visit our constituency soon, Madam Speaker, and we are anticipating favorable and grand announcements as it relates to the development of our schools. After all, St. Ann Northwestern holds the capital of education for St. Ann and neighboring parishes.
Right.
The attention is well needed and deserved. Madam Speaker, we continue to be thankful for the National Broadband and Community Public Wi-Fi initiatives. We had our launch of our second community public Wi-Fi in Brownstown a few months ago. All infrastructure is in place to launch our third community public Wi-Fi spot in Mount Zion, and we will be receiving our fourth Wi-Fi spot area in the community of Tickets. The Universal Service Fund will be providing the Addison Park Computer Laboratory with 20 new computers by the end of November. I want to note that currently the lab has been down for many years, Madam Speaker, due to the computers being obsolete. So this is a big deal, because what this means now is that our customer service courses, call center courses, coding courses, and other computer-related classes will be taught. Let me publicly commend and thank the Minister of Energy, Science and Technology and the team at the Universal Service Fund for their continued hard work and for the financial support that was given to the York Castle High School robotics team in representing Jamaica in the World Robotics Championship in Texas in March. Madam Speaker, the update on the Muirhouse Infant Department project, which will be to rehabilitate the play area and to be funded by the Jamaica Bauxite Institute as one of their 45th anniversary projects, is far advanced. Work should begin before the end of this year. Through the CDF, we were able to contribute towards the educational upliftment of many. Over 600 students received book vouchers, 35 students tablet devices, 55 tertiary grants. With additional support from charities, we provided over 2,500 backpack and school supplies, contributed over $500,000 to the development of 2 new classroom spaces at the Brownstown Infant School. This will be able to assist them in getting certified by the Early Childhood Commission. Through sponsorship, Madam Speaker, we facilitated over 800 back-to-school medicals free of cost to the parents. Madam Speaker, we endeavour to meet the welfare of our people, those in need of assistance and support with funeral grants, purchasing of medical supplies, medical services, housing assistance and food supply. Madam Speaker, with all this being said, I am in support of my colleagues in asking for a review of the CDF.
Here, 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 here. That's right, that's right.
The need for support in various areas of human and infrastructural development remains relatively high. In most cases in my office, we are only able to meet approximately 5 to 10% of the requests that comes in each year. And Madam Speaker, in looking at it, the CDF was developed through extensive research and policy. 15 years ago, it was conceptualized that members of parliaments would be allocated $40 million to assist in their community development activities. Fast forward to now, Madam Speaker. It is inconceivable that $20 million, which is half of the amount, would be able to cover what was conceptualized then. Madam Speaker, it would mean that we are able to do less, and we're confined to doing less than what was being done.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, I would like to thank the Minister of Local Government and Rural Development for the Paint the City project in the Brownstown area. The town is looking good with the murals and the facelift and renovations to the market, Madam Speaker. And it is well appreciated by all.
Absolutely.
Ministers committed to the renovation of the car park centre. This is in dire need of repair, and so it was a relief to the taximen, passengers and vendors there when they heard of this project to come. Madam Speaker, Brownstown remains one of the largest towns in St. Ann, with over 3,000 persons commuting through the town on a daily basis, being the main town for many. Madam Speaker, the reality is that the town is in serious need of a redesign, and which entails structured town planning and development.
That's right. That's right.
The plan should not only comprise of diverting the traffic by creating bypasses and improved parking spaces, but it would also make sense for us at this time to investigate the expansion of the town to create more room for businesses and other entities. Madam Speaker, there are vacant lands, both private and government-owned, from Brownstown heading to Orange Valley and from Orange Valley heading to Runaway Bay that can be considered for expansion. Madam Speaker, the Brownstown Health District is eagerly awaiting the development of the new health centre in Brownstown. The current structure cannot adequately meet the needs of the population, Madam Speaker. Last year, over 19,500 patients utilized the services at the Brownstown Health Centre. It is with this in mind, we welcome this project wholeheartedly and thank the Minister of Health and Wellness and the State Minister of Health and Wellness. All the workers at the Northeast Regional Health Authority and the rest of the team from the Ministry of Health for prioritizing this project. Madam Speaker, this design concept has been finalized. The no objection letter from the St. Ann Municipal Corporation has been secured for a temporary location at the Liberty Valley and Country Club to be used for the health centre during demolition and reconstruction. Stakeholder engagement sessions are expected to be conducted over the next 8 months to sensitize the public and respond to any concerns that may arise. Madam Speaker, we continue to lobby and push towards the concept of building a new health centre in Runaway Bay to become a reality. We are happy that steps are being taken towards this goal, as the issue of the existing health centre being inadequate for the population it serves remains a point of major concern to all of us. The hope is that the project development will be done during the 2023-2024 financial year. Madam Speaker, the beauty and geographical location of our constituency continues to make us ideal for tourism. We have the best blue and crystal clear waters at the suited temperatures, along with the lush and exotic greenery tied into the panoramic views from the hills. We are the perfect destination on the coast. Madam Speaker, tourism is ever expanding in St. Ann Northwestern. We are anticipating the development of 3 additional hotels soon. The new Secrets Resorts in Richmond, the expansion of the Bahia Principe and the Sandals Beaches Resorts. Yes. We continue to see more Airbnbs and villas being built in the constituency. This is consistent overall, with Jamaica being the fastest growing Caribbean destination.
Yes, that's right.
A new tour in Mount Pleasant, named the One in Level Farm Cottages, is scheduled to be opened in December 2022. We continue to work towards the Sturgestown Cultural Heritage Tour. This tour, Madam Speaker, is a perfect combination of culture, history, scenery, and adventure. We have the most unique caves, exciting hiking trails, the Malice Spring, which is said to be the reason the people in Sturgestown lives the longest in the entire island, because they drink from the Malice Spring, and other interesting features. Many thanks to the tour for funding and implementing the repainting of the Wall of Fame at the school wall in Sturgestown. This, Madam Speaker, will form a vital part of the tour. Madam Speaker, with these developments and opportunities in tourism, we will certainly be preparing our constituents to be employable. Our people remain the most treasured attraction, and their development is most important for any other form of development to be successful. We welcome these developments. We welcome these developments because it is the clearest indication of growth, development, and prosperity. However, Madam Speaker, wherever opportunities exist, particularly in relation to employment, it is of my belief that for constituents, a protocol be developed for them to be given first priority of employment, having regards to their qualifications, competence, and experience.
Only fair.
Madam Speaker, Flavors Beach in Runaway Bay will be developed by TPDCO. Funds are already earmarked for this project. Therefore, once the design is finalized, the process will be accelerated to execution. Madam Speaker, TPDCO is currently implementing the Old Folly Beach Park project, which is also included in the beautification near the Bengal Bridge on both ends. This project is coming on quite nicely, Madam Speaker, and already the park is being used and appreciated by locals and visitors. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our Minister of Tourism and the team at TPDCO for ensuring that our section of St. Anne is a part of the development in tourism and our coastlines are being beautified. Madam Speaker, we have been reassured that as it relates to the cleaning and debushing of our corridors, we should be seeing much more improvement within the next few months. The team has started, Madam Speaker, and we are hoping that the stretch is maintained going forward so that safety, cleanliness, and beauty will prevail. Madam Speaker, we were able to assist over 330 farmers with fertilizers. We have provided assistance for close to 100 poultry farmers in the form of poultry feed, day-old broiler birds, and medication. My office not only provided input, but worked closely with RADA with the training of beneficiaries of the proper management and use of these inputs in their respective enterprises. Cattle production is a thriving business in my constituency, Madam Speaker, and as such, we purchased close to 5 animals as part of the herd improvement program that we hope to expand. Madam Speaker, a reliable source of water is an important factor in agricultural production. Through the Productive Incentive Program and CDF, we have assisted 30 farmers with irrigation apparatus. As part of the predial larceny management and creating awareness of RADA functions, we have conducted mass farmer registration in various communities. Through the CDF, we have beautifully repainted and done repairs to the Fisherman's Beach House and the vending area on the Salem Fisherman's Beach in April of this year. And I would like to thank the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries for his support to our farmers so far and to a greater extent the constituency. And we are looking forward to even making a greater impact in the years to come for both our farmers and fishermen. Madam Speaker, infrastructural work on some of our community playing fields and sports complex.
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the standing orders be suspended to enable the member to continue her presentation to its conclusion, notwithstanding the time limit on speeches.
Members, the question before the House is that the member be given sufficient time to complete her presentation. Those in favor?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, colleagues.
Lisa, you look good in the lesson.
It fit her. It fit her. It fit her.
Speak her with Lisa. Yeah, man. Let the right of them stay.
Madam Speaker, infrastructural work on some of our community playing fields and sports complex has begun to take place. We have developed a multi-purpose court and fenced around it at the Discovery Bay playing field. The project to redevelop and fence the multi-purpose court at Addison Park Sports Complex has started yesterday. These courts will be able to facilitate netball, volleyball, and basketball. I would like to thank the Sports Development Foundation for funding the fencing of the Discovery Bay Court, and I am looking forward, Madam Speaker, to have our distinguished Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports to join us in the ribbon cutting and handing over of these two facilities before the end of the year.
By the way, you must invite Dayton. You need to invite Dayton.
Madam Speaker, we have also rendered and painted the stands for Jamaica 60 at the Addison Park Sports Complex.
That's right.
This project started on Labor Day, and I'm hoping that when Minister visits, we will get additional support needed to develop the facility. It being a central and key location to over 100 communities.
Lisa, be presidential now.
Madam Speaker, we will be building soon a training center with a bathroom at the Salem playing field. The first phase of the project entails the construction of the infrastructure and will be funded by the TPD Spruce Up Funds and the CDF. The second phase, Madam Speaker, will include outfitting a section of the training center with computers.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, we are working with TEF to develop the playing field at Mines. The project will be underway early next year. The first phase will be to level the playing field area and to fence it around.
Level the field.
Madam Speaker, we have hit the ground running in sports and community development. We have partnered with Southwest St. Anne, and we are currently hosting our Champions of Champions Football League. We have 40 teams participating. This league was started in June and will end in the middle of November. We have ensured to enroll with the St. Anne Football Federation, and this will not only be good for the discipline of the competition, but also higher quality games and standards.
That's right.
As we draw closer to the quarterfinals, officials will be looking at the talents that are being displayed and present opportunities for growth in the sport. Madam Speaker, also this summer, we hosted our Reggae Talent Expo. This event was well supported and served its purpose in highlighting our local talents within our communities. Give exposure and experience to these talents, Madam Speaker. Provide airtime, studio opportunities, as well as to reward top performances. We have a lot of talent in Centre and Northwestern bursting at the seams to be heard and encouraged towards greatness. It was even said that the quality of some of our performances were so good that they could have joined the national competition, and so we will be encouraging them, Minister, to do so. Madam Speaker, we will be hosting our Grand Gospel Concert this year on December 10. We will be having professional performances as well as our local gospel artists. Madam Speaker, this concert will not only give God the highest praises, but also to uplift the community spirit and togetherness, support our community talents by providing this platform for their exposure, and to promote economic life within Brownstown and its environs.
That's right.
Madam Speaker, we have started our Pondicona meetings with various agencies and stakeholders. We have hosted 3 meetings so far in the communities of Lewis, Old Folly, and Mount Olivet and Mount Pleasant. Our 4th meeting will be held in Muir House next week. These meetings are quite spirited and interactive, Madam Speaker, as we learn from our residents and listen to their concerns. They also learn from the various entities and become more aware and knowledgeable about specific functions, roles, and responsibilities. Madam Speaker, we have been making good strides as it relates to development of housing solutions in our constituency. The Savannah Housing Project for middle-income earners in Bel Air, which is phase 2 of the Vistas, has started. Yes. Madam Speaker, the Minard Estate Housing Development Project with 650 housing units, which is to be done by the NHT, is currently being undertaken by the pre-qualified developers to develop the land. That's right. Proposals are expected by the end of November 2022. Madam Speaker, we have several private developers who are investing in building housing solutions at different types and price points. We have condominiums such as the Azure, which will be the tallest building in the area, the Paradisiac Beach Club with villas, apartments, and standalone homes to 211 eco-friendly homes to be built at the Mahogany Hill development in Chester, just to name a few. Madam Speaker, I am proud to be a part of a government that truly cares. Yes. I commend the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister and Minister of Economic Growth and Job Creation, for establishing the Hope New Social Housing Program in 2018. And I thank the Hope team for their commitment towards making sure that these goals are met. Madam Speaker, I have had the privilege of participating in ribbon cuttings of 4 houses built through this program. That's right. For recipients who are vulnerable or fire victims within the communities of Goshen, Retirement, Sturgetown, and Clayground. Madam Speaker, these houses that are built, they are built to the highest quality standards, yet affordable. It is times like these, Madam Speaker, when the burden of being a member of Parliament feels lighter. When you look and see the joy, the pride, the appreciation on the faces of the beneficiaries, knowing very well that the hope that we talk about has become a reality for them, and it will spark the light of hope to others. Correct. Madam Speaker, we have, as a constituency management team, consulted and sought to meet the needs of our constituents. We anticipate as an evolving development team. I say evolving as we pull in emerging young leaders to continue to tap into the energy of our people to realize their dreams of development, build wealth and prosperity, secure our families' health, assured also of the handover of legacy for our next generation. Madam Speaker, I will continue to stay focused and put my very best effort in serving the people of St. and Northwestern well in every opportune moment. And as Galatians 6 verses 9 says, Madam Speaker, in our good book, amen. And let us not be weary in doing well, in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. Amen. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Well done, well done, well done, well done, well done, well done, well done. In order to achieve what you need, you can never give up. You can never give up. And this hope that keeps me holding on. And on. And this hope that makes me carry on. Couldn't have made it alone. I got a wonderful life, 2 kids of my own, with a strong foundation that was carved in stone. And my mama, father, love that made my house a home. And you wonder sometimes if this was meant to be. All this for a humble little guy like me. And all I ever really wanted was a family to teach my kids the same value that she gave to me. It's a song every time till the times are high. And the road may be rocky, you can cry, just never give up. You can never give up. In this life you can lead if you only believe, and in order to achieve what you need, you can never give up. You can never give up. And this hope that keeps me holding on.
Madam Speaker.
And this hope that makes me carry on. Not gonna step up, I think
Madam Speaker, excellent presentation by both members, Madam Speaker, and a lively end to the presentation made by the member from St. Anne. So, Madam Speaker, I now ask that the debate be suspended.
Just before we ask for the suspension of the debate, I want to say as Speaker that I want to thank the member from Northwestern St. Anne for, and I am sincere about this, a true snapshot of the member's stewardship in this constituency. I live in Northwest St. Anne. I go to the market in Brownstown every week. I talk to the people there, and everything she has said this evening is true, and we are all happy with her stewardship in St. Anne. True. I mentioned to her this afternoon one road that somebody asked for. There's always room for more to be done, but she continues to serve, and her stewardship is well appreciated. And with that, I ask members for the suspension of the constituency debate for this afternoon. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I now ask for the recommittal of items, statements by ministers through to presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained.
Members, the question before the House is that we have the recommittal of items starting with statements from ministers. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Statements by ministers.
Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to advise this Honourable House
Member, permission is granted for you to speak first.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I look forward to the new Parliament when the issues of Mike and other things would be resolved. Madam Speaker, I am pleased to advise this Honourable House that the long-awaited bail bill is being tabled today. It's been tabled today. Madam Speaker, permit me to acknowledge the presence of the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, Mr. Wayne O. Robertson. It was my expectation that this bill would have been here sooner, Madam Speaker, but the review and turnaround at different stages of the process were longer than I reasonably expected and anticipated. And if the robust discussion generated during the review before tabling is anything to go by, then I expect even greater discussion to follow. Madam Speaker, the bill consists in 24 clauses and 4 schedules. While it is not my intention to open debate on it today, as time is required for members to read it fully and carefully, I should nonetheless like to highlight its main features, including the new provisions to which attention is to be paid. Madam Speaker, I cannot overemphasize the need for careful reading of the provisions, or tendency to talk about what we think the law is or what we think it should be without reading and assessing what is actually drafted has been quite unhelpful in debates on bills before this Parliament. This bill, Madam Speaker, when passed, will repeal and replace the existing Bail Act of 2000. And there are 2 primary reasons for the rewrite. Firstly, Madam Speaker, all statutes enacted prior to the replacement of Chapter 3 of the Constitution of Jamaica with the new Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms 2011 must be reviewed, especially those which engage fundamentally guaranteed rights and freedoms, and they are to be reviewed for compliance with the Charter. The second reason for the rewrite, Madam Speaker, is that while we have preserved the settled common law principles on bail, the extent of the tidying up and restructuring of the existing Act that would be required would mean that practically every provision would have to be amended. And so the decision was taken to rewrite and replace the existing Act with a new one that is being tabled today. Madam Speaker, the bill honours the entitlement to bail that is guaranteed at Section 14(4) of the Constitution, which provides that any person awaiting trial and detained in custody shall be entitled to bail on reasonable conditions unless sufficient cause is shown for keeping him in custody. Our highest court has opined that it is not in dispute that the Constitution is given a generous and purposive interpretation, and in particular the provisions that enshrine fundamental rights and freedoms should receive a generous and not literalist interpretation. Of equal guidance is a caution that rejection of a narrow or legalistic interpretation cannot mean that other sections of a constitution can be construed as creating rights where they do not contain any. Madam Speaker, Section 14(1)(f) of the Constitution of Jamaica permits deprivation of liberty on reasonable grounds and in accordance with fair procedures established by law in circumstances of the arrest or detention of a person for the purpose of bringing him before the competent legal authority on reasonable suspicion of his having committed an offence or where it is reasonably necessary to prevent his committing an offence. There have been too many examples of people languishing in custody without charge or trial within a reasonable time in our jurisdiction. Madam Speaker, in many cases involving serious crimes, major difficulties are encountered in completing investigations or case files in a timely manner. And we are very familiar with a culture of informa fide. And this culture is still pervasive and it results in serious injustice. Witnesses are being threatened or even murdered. Many who provide credible intelligence to the police are often reluctant to proceed further to enable the police to convert that intelligence to evidence. Sometimes, Madam Speaker, witnesses and immediate victims are themselves part and parcel of the criminality, resulting in varying levels of investigative complexity. These and other documented peculiarities in our Jamaican society necessitate innovative responses, legislatively and otherwise. Madam Speaker, in our beloved country where we aspire for security and where we value our rights above all, there is no avoiding a balance between freedom and dignity on the one hand and security on the other. It was an eminent Chief Justice of a final court who said that human rights must not become a tool for denying security to the public and the state. A balance is required. A balance is required, a sensitive and difficult balance between freedom and dignity of the individual and national security and public safety. This synthesis between national security and individual freedom reflects the rich and fertile character of the principle of rule of law in particular and democracy in general. Madam Speaker, I notice from discussions in the public sphere on issues when laws are being passed, especially new laws or fundamental review, you almost hear a warning being given as if the Parliament should not do what the Parliament must do. The foundation of democracy, Madam Speaker, is a legislature enacted freely and periodically by the people. We too often forget this fundamental principle. Undermining the legislature undermines democracy. The legislature is elected by the people to enact laws for peace, order, and good government. Its main role, therefore, Madam Speaker, is to enact statutes. These statutes are subject to judicial review of their constitutionality and judicial interpretation of their meaning. If the judiciary determines that a statute is unconstitutional, the matter returns to the legislature, which may enact a new statute that achieves the same fundamental purpose as a voided statute, while adopting more proportionate means. Madam Speaker, as I've said elsewhere, this process is a proper dialogue between the branches. It is not a dialogue that takes place in meetings between judges and legislators. It is one that takes place by each branch carrying out its constitutional role. This leads me to the bill in particular. A person who is arrested, Madam Speaker, or detained on reasonable grounds that he has committed an offence does not automatically move from arrest or detention to trial. He must go through a process with various stages along the way before he is tried. Having guaranteed an entitlement to bail, the question of bail must be considered once the liberty of the person is engaged on the basis that he is reasonably suspected of having committed an offence. The new bail law, Madam Speaker, will permit a grant of bail at 3 stages: pre-charge, in defined cases, post-charge, and post-conviction in defined cases. I can say that the pre-charge provision perhaps will be of greatest interest to those who have been waiting for the new bail law, and I would like to direct members' attention to that provision. Madam Speaker, the bill sets out very clearly who the deciding official is who will grant bail, and essentially they are the judge, the justice of the peace, and the police constable, who is neither the arresting officer nor an officer involved in the investigation of the offence. And in cases of pre-charge bail, the police officer is to be at the rank of or above superintendent of police. The question of bail in relation to a child, Madam Speaker, is to be determined by the Children's Court in accordance with provisions of the Child Care and Protection Act, with requirement that for a parent or guardian who consents to being a surety to ensure compliance with conditions of bail by the child until the child attains the age of majority. Madam Speaker, grant of bail prior to charge for scheduled offences is set out at Clause 5, with provision for appeal to a parish judge in chambers against conditions imposed. Conditions that...
the Minister's time for speaking has expired.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the Minister be allowed to continue her presentation.
Members, the question is that the Minister be given time to complete her presentation. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the provision in respect of bail prior to charge for scheduled offences is set out at Clause 5, and it also has a provision for appeal to a parish judge in chambers against conditions imposed. Conditions that may be imposed when bail is granted by a justice of the peace or by the police are defined, but greater latitude is given to the court to impose conditions as appear necessary. There is a form of notice in prescribed form in the first schedule for administrative ease. As a matter of fact, Madam Speaker, a feature of the new law is a prescription of forms to enable ease for persons who must use the law, and also to minimize delay in getting records of decisions taken.
If I might just intervene for a moment, I'm going to encourage all of us as members of Parliament. We just finished the new Farms Act, and I don't know if we are paying attention to the conditions and reading them, and the presentation by the Minister is very important, because these are matters that affect all of us, all Jamaicans, and particularly us at this time. So I would urge us all, because it's a debate that we should understand if we're taking part in it, and know why we say A and nay to the clauses that are there. So I'm urging us all as members of Parliament, and I'm saying it for a particular reason, that we are consenting and saying A sometimes, A and nay, and we're not sure what we're saying A and nay to. Please.
Madam Speaker, I thank you, and perhaps I should add that laws under rule of law must be publicly promulgated, they must be impartially adjudicated upon, and more importantly, equally enforced. And all of us can be the subject of the law. Any law. So, Madam Speaker, in respect of the provision for bail prior to charge, a judge is to consider the reasonableness of conditions imposed and may vary or revoke any condition that would not impair investigation of the offence that the defendant is reasonably suspected of committing. There is grant of bail after charge but prior to conviction at Clause 6. And essentially, Madam Speaker, there is an entitlement to bail unless there is sufficient cause for holding the defendant in custody. And a defendant is not to be held in custody for a period longer than 48 hours without bail being considered. Bail, Madam Speaker, shall be granted to a defendant who is charged with an offence not punishable with imprisonment unless circumstances set out in another clause at 7.5 exist to show in relation to the conduct of the defendant on previous grants of bail or where protection is required. Madam Speaker, only a judge may determine the question of bail where a defendant is charged with scheduled offences in Part 1 of the second schedule, and that feature already exists in the law. Grant of bail after conviction is exceptional. Clause 13 addresses this issue. And the grant may be to defendants who were on bail prior to conviction for offences other than those scheduled at Part 2 of the second schedule and who appeal against conviction. Madam Speaker, the circumstances in which bail may be denied are set out in Clause 7, and I do believe it will be of particular attention to persons as they read the bill. Clause 7.2 is a special provision in relation to defendants charged with the offence of murder, where self-defence does not arise and where the murder is committed in circumstances amounting to capital murder, or where the offence is committed in a zozo, an area under a state of emergency, or where a cordon has been established or a curfew imposed. The clause sets out the details that would guide the court's consideration, and perhaps attention may be directed to Clause 7, 3, I, J, and K. Conditions of bail, Madam Speaker, at Clause 8 are to ensure that the defendant surrender to custody, does not commit an offence while on bail, or interfere with witnesses, or otherwise obstruct the course of justice in relation to himself or others. The law provides that some conditions may only be imposed by a court, and these include surrender of travel documents, imposition of curfew, and the wearing of electronic bracelet. This is a new provision. And I know, Madam Speaker, it was an issue that was raised, I think, by Member Michelle Charles. And I'm pleased to tell her that, you know, all well-thinking persons can immediately appreciate that the wearing of electronic bracelet can go a long way in helping us to address issues. Section 9, Madam Speaker, sets out general provisions relating to bail. Conditions imposed may be varied on application of the defendant or the prosecution. New application for bail may be made in defined circumstances, and those are set out at Clause 9.3. And essentially, it's where there is a change in circumstances affecting the matter since the previous consideration, or where applicable facts were unavailable, applicable or relevant facts were unavailable or did not exist at the time. Bail can be revoked in defined circumstances, including where the defendant absconds, breaches a condition of bail, or commits an offence while on bail. Madam Speaker, I think it was one of my colleagues who said that sometimes we think of victims in a narrow way, but we have victims who are victims of the system and the administrative inefficiencies in our systems. And bearing in mind that, and Madam Speaker, having seen the law from various perspectives, all information regarding the grant or refusal of bail, they are to be recorded in prescribed form, and they are to be disclosed to both sides, defendant and the prosecution. And this is really for greater protection of the parties and for administrative ease. Madam Speaker, reasons are also to be given, and we have prescribed the form in which the reasons are to be given. And this is where to be given both to prosecution and defendant, where there is a refusal of bail or imposition or variation of conditions, as well as a revocation of bail. Where the defendant is unrepresented, he is to be informed of the procedure for review of decisions to deny, impose or vary conditions or revoke bail. There is an extensive provision in relation to review of bail decisions. Decision of a justice of the peace or the police when the bail is granted out of court is to be reviewed by a judge of the parish court with the jurisdiction to try the offence. And on first appearance in court, where there has been a change in circumstances or where applicable facts were unavailable, the court has a power to review any grant made out of court. A judge also is to review fortnightly cases involving defendants who were granted bail but were unable to take up the grant. Police officer in charge of the lockup or whomever is in charge of the correctional institution is now under statutory duty to supply a list of those defendants to the court at specified times set out at clause 13.3. The provision for appeal of decisions by the judge is provided for at clause 12. Appeals by the defendants lie to a judge of the Supreme Court in chambers from a decision of the parish judge, to a judge of the Court of Appeal in chambers from a decision of the judge of the Supreme Court, and an appeal by the prosecution lies to the Court of Appeal. Madam Speaker, there is tidying up in respect of absconding by a person on bail, and that is set out at clause 14. It is punishable on summary conviction before a parish judge to imprisonment up to 5 years, or before a circuit court to imprisonment up to 7 years, and the sentence is to run consecutively to the sentence of the offence for which the person was on bail, if convicted. Madam Speaker, there are new provisions in respect to surety, and they are set out between clauses 16 to 20. In closing, I wish to say that the bill is to be reviewed by a joint select committee of the Houses of Parliament, and I look forward to studied consideration of the provisions in the stages that follow leading up to the passing of the bill. Madam Speaker, we have made every effort to strike the right balance to ensure that the course of justice is not perverted. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, this bill is a very important bill. And as we know, it has been in gestation for over at least 4 to 5 years. I recall having sight of an initial draft, and it is just getting here. It's a very important bill, as the Minister indicated. It speaks to and it goes to fundamental rights and freedom of our citizens, and therefore it ought not to be taken lightly. Any legislation that stands the chance or risk of infringing on the rights of innocent Jamaicans, because there is a tendency to presume that once someone is accused or charged, that they are guilty to prove their innocence. It's a presumption. Not saying that that's not the law, but the practice is as such. That's our reality. Madam Speaker, crime and violence in our society transcend political administrations. for a number of years.
But it is important. I just want to remind you, we're not debating today.
No,
You're
yes,
just
yes.
responding.
And my response is
Right,
brief.
right.
Crime and violence is the foremost problem that faces us. The government, no more than the opposition, wants that to be brought under control. And there's long acknowledgement of a slew of legislative steps to be taken to strengthen our security architecture towards that end. So if our bail provisions need to be strengthened, we have no difficulty. However, it must be, as far as the opposition is concerned, in keeping with the provisions of our Constitution. That is, you know, there have been bills that have been passed in this House that the court has struck down as being unconstitutional. No, I'm saying, Madam Minister, that is a matter of fact. That's not an opinion I'm giving. That bills that have been passed here in this House have been struck down as being in breach of the Constitution. That, as I said, is a matter of fact. We don't wish that to reoccur. All I will say for now, Madam Speaker, as being as important as this bill is, and as I said, it has taken a long time to get here. You know what, last night when I saw the notice that this will be tabled, I came here with great anxiety to see it. But it was not here. It was further delayed to reach our eyes. No, earlier on, it was just tabled while we were sitting, right? No, man. But it was a printry. I understand. I made inquiry of the clerk. Yes. So, where I'm going to is, as my colleague intimated, Madam Minister, I presume that we are going to allow for full contribution in the joint select. Right? Full contribution in the joint select. And Madam Speaker, one of the things I have learned in this parliament as long, one of the most useful instrument of this parliament is our joint select. It brings oneness to what comes out at the end. And Madam Minister, I've been on quite a few joint select that has been very fruitful. I look forward to the joint select and the deliberations in this bill. You know, Madam Speaker, I will stand longer just because of that member there from West Kingston.
Madam Speaker, at one stage, I wondered whether Member Jackson was actually listening, because we do not divide on the view of the value to be derived from having review of a bill by a joint select committee of the Parliament. And I don't know why he is of the view that it's only in recent times the courts have discharged their constitutional duty in reviewing bills and declaring whether they are consistent with our Constitution or not. And it is for that reason I say that Parliament has to do its job and the courts have to do theirs, and we're both guided by each other. So, Madam Speaker, on that note, let me thank Member Jackson, who really is saying that he wants to be on the joint select, and I hope his leader will ensure that he is on the joint select committee to review the bill.
Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House today are copies of the annual report on audited financial statements of the National Works Agency for the year 2014-2015.
bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Bail Act 2022.
Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sittings of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. And the presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained, which was just done, and public business.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Under public business, I just wish to highlight that on the 20th day of September 2022, I gave notice of two motions proposing amendments to the standing orders. Standing Order 87 stipulates that, quote, unless the Speaker otherwise directs not less than 12 days' notice of a motion to amend the standing orders shall be given, end of quote. And now that mandatory notice period has expired, Madam Speaker, I therefore move that the items standing in my name at numbers 5 and 6 under public business be referred to the Standing Orders Committee for consideration and report. Madam Speaker, by way of explanation, item 5 requires a review of Standing Orders 14 to 19 relating to questions, and item 6 concerns an amendment to Standing Order 32C to increase the time allocated for each member to make their speech during the State of the Constituency debate. Madam Speaker, I now ask that the motions be referred to the Standing Orders Committee. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I know that this matter is going to be dealt with by the Standing Orders Committee, but as I indicated earlier in my presentation, we are anticipating certain provisions in the standing orders to take effect on the second Tuesday of the month. I suspect the acting leader of government business is wishing for that matter to be looked at the Standing Orders Committee before we invoke it next Tuesday. I am speaking of Prime Minister's question time. It's a provision that we, and you had given some acknowledgement of that, we intend to utilize. In the meeting of the Standing Orders Committee, we will try to determine the framework, whether one question is allowed or three, and your determination as to urgency and relevance and so on. So I'm looking forward to the meeting as early as possible so that we can, as soon as possible thereafter, get clarification and be certain as to the provisions relating to that and other matters dealing with questions and answers.
Madam Speaker, for my part, I really look forward to the review that is to take place. As a matter of fact, Madam Speaker, I really think that we need to look at a number of the orders of the standing order, which incidentally are regulations of the Constitution, to make them more fit for purpose and the purpose of discussion and deliberation of matters here. I note Member Paulwell has been riding his intention. The honourable member from East Kingston and Port Royal, which really is a proper way of addressing each other. Perhaps, Madam Speaker, as part of the review we should get a little tag in front of each seat. No, plaques are known to be done, which indicate who sits where as a member from the constituency, and it would ensure that none of us falls into error, as I did in improperly referring, or the public. But it is important, and I just say, Madam Speaker, we sometimes underestimate the importance of helping the public to realize that the legislature is the foundation of our democracy. So, Madam Speaker, I commend the acting House Leader, and I look forward to the results of the deliberations from the Regs Committee.
Thank you, House Leader, Opposition Leader of the House, and Minister Malo Fort. And to say I knew this would not be controversial. Everyone would want extra time when it comes to the state of the constituency debate. So at this point, Madam Speaker, I ask that the motion be referred to Standing Orders Committee. Seek your approval. Okay.
Members, the question before the House is that the motion be referred to the Standing Orders Committee. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, we are anticipating the Prime Minister's arrival when I will ask for a recommittal of statements by ministers. At this time, I ask for maybe a 5-minute
Members, the question before the House is that we do suspend this sitting until the arrival of the Prime Minister, which I expect will be before 4:15. He's on his way here. I'm just thinking traffic. Those in favor? Those against? Those against? The House is now suspended until the Prime Minister arrives.
Are you using cash only and having doubts about paying digitally? Or are you paying with one click of a button? Either way, the next Caribbean Economic Forum is for you. Join the conversation on moving to digital payments.